Using the power of the dark side, I will present to you your new assignment. This is for you.
Hey there, Braves. I got a brand new project for you. Now, this project is going to last most of quarter one, and the idea overall is to get you outside doing real science instead of dying slowly in front of your Chromebook. So, what are you going to be doing? Well, you're going to be picking an ecosystem of your choice. An ecosystem is just a physical location and all of the natural resources and little creatures that live there, all interacting together. So it's not just the habitat, it's not just the location, it's everything about that particular spot that you choose. And really the idea is to get you practicing real science, going out and taking data and making observations, analyzing that data with your classmates in these different Zoom sessions that we have, and overall creating an ecological assessment to determine whether or not your ecosystem is healthy. This is going to take some work, but I am confident you are capable of doing this work on your own or with a few of your peers. In fact, I encourage you to work with other students in class. Just do so in a, appropriately socially distanced manner. So, with that, let me introduce you to your new project.
Now, the next thing I want to share with you is what your project looks like and how it works. So let me go on ahead and do a quick screen share here. Desktop. All right, so you should all be seeing overall my screen here. And as I switch over, I'm gonna pop up and, oh, there goes the light. Spooky. Okay, point being, not point being, what am I saying? All right, moving on, back to where I was. So your quarter one project sequence is right here. Now, the one thing I want to go on ahead and reiterate with all of you is that this is not for you to work on. I posted this to give you an idea of what every single step of your project looks like, the assignments that will get you ready for each of your field investigations, so you can kind of get an idea of what to expect. Now, I am going to release this project, or at least the assignments, in a piecemeal fashion, meaning each week I'm going to release part of this overall project. And I'll go into what I mean by that. So when you click on this, you get this whole full file and you're welcomed with the friendly neighborhood ecosystem diagnostic. Now I give you your objectives for this project. I'm assuming you can read, but I'll go over them very quickly. You're going to collect and analyze data within your local ecosystem. Collecting data is as simple as, writing down observations or taking photos, or anything that is information is data, essentially. You're going to identify limiting factors of your ecosystem. A limiting factor is something that keeps populations from growing. It could be a limited amount of water resources. It could be a limited amount of soil resources. It could be a limited number of bunny rabbits in the ecosystem, and that would prevent coyote populations from getting too big. So that would be a limiting factor on their population growth. You'll be looking for things like this. You're going to explain how the organisms in your ecosystem, that's plants and animals and fungi and bacteria, how they interact with one another to share or to transport or transmit energy and nutrients to whatever is eating them, right? And the feeding relationships within the ecosystem. You're going to have to define those. Who is eating who in your ecosystem? Hopefully you guys can figure that out. It shouldn't be too difficult. You're going to measure and assess the biodiversity of the ecosystem. This one is going to be an interesting little field investigation, and I'll go into what that is in a minute. And then you're going to assess the health of the selected ecosystem and predict or infer potential outcomes given different environmental changes. The whole point of this is for you to start analyzing and thinking about your data and then figuring out what could potentially happen to your ecosystem. Let's say the climate gets warmer. Let's say one of the populations that is overabundant in your ecosystem crashes. What's going to happen to all of the things that rely on that? So I'm going to have you guys thinking about a lot of this stuff because this is what ecologists actually think about and do. And, that's what this whole unit's about. It's ecology. So moving into your project, what are you going to have to do? Well, you're going to have to choose an ecosystem first. Choosing an ecosystem is a fairly easy task. Now, if you have a nice big backyard and you just want your backyard to be the ecosystem of your study, that's totally fine. You're gonna need something that is about half the size of a football field. So if you think of a football field as being an acre, if you in your house is on an acre of land or half an acre of land, then you have enough land. So half a football field is what you're looking for. If you do not have half a football field worth of land, you need to go find someplace else. Now, picking an ecosystem is fairly easy. You want to find something that actually has life in it, right? You don't want to just go out to the middle of a parking lot with a few stalks of grass here or there. That's not going to be very useful. You're not going to find much, and it's going to not be a fun project. You can go to a riverbank. Now, if you're going to a riverbank and choosing that area, you need to find a very safe place to do it. There are several different parks along different rivers. This particular area I don't know very well, but perhaps you have your own riverfront park. Those are the places that I would recommend you going if you want to go into that ecosystem. Don't go into the river, they're dangerous. And I don't need your life. I don't want to be responsible for your death is what I'm trying to say. So please don't go drown in a river. A creek would be fine. Creeks are great places. Things to mention when you are near bodies of water: water moccasins or cottonmouths, the poisonous venomous snake. You got to keep an eye out for snakes and reptiles when you are at near bodies of water in the state. Other things to mention: if you are out in the woods, the timberland, I think it's a timberland. Yeah, timber. Maybe it's just a timber rattlesnake. Those are out here in this area. There are several different species of venomous snake out there. Copperheads and rattlers, mainly the timber rattlesnake, are the two to be weary of if you're out in the woods and whatnot. Other things to be aware of is obviously what poison ivy looks like. We don't really have poison oak or poison sumac here in Kansas, but we do have poison ivy. So you want to make sure when you are out in your ecosystem and doing all the things that you're going to be doing, you know what that looks like and know how to avoid it. Anyways, the point is, you want to find an ecosystem that's diverse. You want to find an ecosystem that's interesting, but you also want to find an ecosystem that's close to your home, because you're going to be going out to this ecosystem multiple times, probably 4 or 5 times total. And you don't want to have to make a 20-minute drive to your ecosystem every time you need to go out there to take data. So my suggestion, my recommendation is you try to find something within 5 or 10 minutes of your house. And again, try and make sure it has plenty of different types of life. Now, do not go onto private property unless you have specific permission to go on private property. You do not want to test people's do not trespass, violators will be shot on sight line of thinking. So, you also just want to make sure people know that you're on their property, because you never know. They might be out there hunting. They might be out there shooting guns. You might be in the path of danger in some way, shape, or form. They might have a large, aggressive dog that they let run around their property that you might not be aware of. So make sure that you have permission to be on private property if that is, in fact, the ecosystem that you are choosing. Other things to keep in mind is, I already said size. I already said making sure it's not something too hard to get to. Already talked about permission and safety. It's someplace you want that you know well, or someplace that isn't too hard to figure out. So what I mean by that is, don't just go to some wooded area and go get yourself lost. If you can find a park that has trails in it, that might be a good place to go, because most parks have trail maps that can help you navigate and keep you from getting lost. Wandering through the woods is never a good idea if you don't know the area. basically, once you're inside the trees, it's very hard to figure out where you just were and what direction you've been traveling. And because you're in the trees, you can't see your way out. So it's very easy to get very lost in the woods. That's why we have all of those old school fairy tales about what happens when kids go into forests and meet different woodland creatures. We'll leave it at that. But the point of the matter is those stories were created for a reason. Going into wooded areas by yourself that you don't know where you're at isn't always a safe or advisable thing to do. Okay, so the other thing I want to mention is I would recommend picking a partner or having a small group working together on this project. The reason I say that is the more eyes and ears that you have, the more things you will find and identify. It will help you guys in case you get stuck or you can't remember what you're supposed to be doing, or you are just trying to figure out what this little creature is that you're seeing. It's also a safety thing too, especially if you're going out in the trails on your own. If you get hurt, if you fall down, if you get bit by a poisonous snake, whatever, you'll have additional people there to support you and help you and get you to safety should something happen. Now, I know that sounds maybe very mom and dad-ish, but it's the truth. The fact of the matter is it's going out into the field by yourself can be dangerous. Now, is it super dangerous? Is it like punching a bear in the face dangerous? No, not at all. It's a fairly safe thing to do, but it can be potentially hazardous to your health and overall well-being if something were to happen to you out there. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so basically you want to pick a good spot. Lots of trees or lots of bushes or lots of different species of flowers and other plants and whatnot. If all you have is a flat piece of ground and it's more or less an open field or a fallow farm field, some cornfield or whatever that's been left fallow for a year or two, I totally understand. And you might find some very interesting things in one of those ecosystems. So don't, necessarily throw those ecosystems away. A fallow farm field or agricultural field can be an interesting ecological study. And it could be a good comparison for all of us when we get into our Zoom breakout rooms to have. If we're sending some people into really rich ecosystems and some people into poor ecosystems, like a fallow field, we can really see how certain things like soil health or different abiotic factors can make a difference. So don't discount those. Your ecosystem is your choice. Just make sure, again, you got about half a football field worth of space and try and get as many creatures in there as possible. Okay, I'm going to make you take a photo of your ecosystem. You're going to have to fill out information so that we can get an idea of what the ecosystem is that you're actually studying. You'll see I have a Google Maps satellite view of your ecosystem I want you to put there. That's so we can get a general idea of the overall abiotic factors in the area, as well as get an idea of whether or not you're in a low-lying area, you're on top of a hill. All of those things are important in understanding your ecosystem. So I'm also going to have you take multiple photos of this ecosystem so we can get an idea, again, of what it looks like and where you're at. And then we're going to start getting into the actual nitty-gritty of each part. Now, I am not going to go through all of this in this video. I am simply going to show you an overview of how this is going to be rolled out. So I'm not going to go through this slide by slide. Don't worry. So here's the overall gist. Like I said, I'm going to roll out your assignments in piecemeal fashion week by week. So week 3, you are going over abiotic factors, which are non-living factors. And what I am going to post on Google Classroom as your assignment for week 3 are these things right here directly under abiotic factors. So these right here where they say assignment, and they go all the way down to here. And this will be your assignments, your 2 assignments for next week. And this is what is going to be pushed out, just these slides from abiotic factors down to this minerals and soil quiz slide. And there's a little quiz attached here that you'll have to take as well. So technically you have 3 assignments next week if you include the 5-question quiz. Now, The other thing that will be rolled out next week is the first part of your project. The first part of your project is you identifying your ecosystem, getting those photos, and you going out and taking soil samples to determine the health of your soil, as well as identifying the abiotic factors in your ecosystem. So this is what will be rolled out next week. Then in week 4, you will be moving on to ecosystem rules. So I will release this chunk of the project and your assignments to get knocked out. So I'm basically just going to copy and paste these slides into a new file, and I'll send that out to you. And you will have to complete the assignments that are attached, and then you will have to go out and complete this part of your project, which is identifying the different decomposers, producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, and top predators in your ecosystem. And that would be week 4. So you can kind of see how I'm going to roll this project out. We're not doing it all at once. And what we'll be discussing in each of these, again, in each of these Zooms, is the data that you take for your project. So you will actually be sharing out your producers that you find in these breakout rooms. That way, if you put something down that's incorrect, the other people in the breakout room can be like, oh, hold up, that's actually not a producer, that's a primary consumer. And here's why we know that. So this is a way for you guys to kind of, again, review your work and ensure your data is good. So that is kind of how we're going to be going through October and partly into the first part of November, since this class, or since this school year is going so quick and we got started so late. So anyways, by the time you are done with this entire project, the idea is to get down here to the ecological assessment. And this is what's worth the biggest amount of points. The ecological assessment part of this is you now completely analyzing all of the data that you have collected, and you are going to basically answer some questions that are geared at assessing the health of your ecosystem. So you can see here it says, is there sufficient abiotic resources in your ecosystem to maintain current populations? That's a judgment call. You're going to have to think about how much water resources or how good the soil content was, or all of those things, and you're going to have to justify your answer with the data you collected the weeks prior. So you are doing real science here. We might not be able to publish this because none of us have the scientific bona fides, so to speak, to publish research and people take it seriously, but you're doing real science. One way or another, this is what science looks like. So this is the project. Hopefully this is enjoyable for you guys. Hopefully this is better than just sitting in front of a computer the whole time. One thing I want to mention that you're definitely going to need for this project is some sort of a photo taking device. That can be a phone, that can be an iPad or some form of a tablet. If you only have your Chromebook and you have to use your webcam for the Chromebook, it's going to be tough. But do what you got to do. If you got an old school digital camera or something like that, whatever you got that can take photos, even if it's an old game system that has one of the silly little cameras on it, whatever. But you're going to need something that takes photos, because I can't be there with you to take them for you. And we need good data. And I don't think you want to sit there and draw all of the things that you find. So make sure you have a photo taking device of some sort. And really, that's the main piece of equipment that you're going to need. Also, a notebook. I would recommend a small notebook. The school gave me a nice little notebook here. It's got the Braves on it. You can see it's about the height of my head. Something like this, or maybe even a little bit smaller, would be nice. And the reason you want to have a notebook is so you can take field notes while you're taking these photos. You can actually make note of what you found, why you took a photo of it, where you found it, describe what it was doing, all of those things. So a field notebook and a photo taking device, that's really all you need to complete this project. And obviously a Chromebook, so you can fill the information out when you get back. Okay, so that is a breakdown of your project. I hope that helped. ease any of the anxiety you may have had when I put out a big 70 plus slide document, we're going to break this up week by week and it won't seem like so much work. So, all right, with that, I will catch you guys later.